Hi, 8th graders. So I'm going to walk you through the practice quiz, so hopefully that'll help you with the actual quiz because the problems kind of mirror each other. The first one is about graphing, and as you can see, neither one of the variables, the y's, are isolated. It needs to be put into slope-intercept form. So what you're going to have to do there is you're going to have to subtract 4x from both sides on this one, and when you do that, you're going to get y equals negative 4x plus 3, and here you want to subtract 2x from both sides so that you have y equals negative 2x plus 1. So now you have both variables, both y's isolated. You can see that your slope in this first one is negative 4 and your y-intercept is positive 3. Okay, and then you see here that your slope is negative 2 and your y-intercept is 1. So when you go to graph this, you start at 3, 0, 3. And your slope is negative 4, so go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right 1. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right 1. So here's your first line. And your second line here, you start here at positive 1. And your slope is a negative 2. I should have put equals negative 2 there. Okay, and it should go down 2. Okay, and to the right 1. Down 2 to the right 1. So down 2 to the right 1, or up 2 to the left 1. You can see both negative slopes. You can see I kind of misaligned there. But here is your solution, which is positive 1, negative 1. So your x is 1, your y is negative 1. Now the really important thing that I haven't spent a lot of time on is making sure, does this actually solve the problem here? So if you plug these numbers in, it should make both equations true. So if I plug this in, 4, I'm just going to do 1, but you could do both. 4 times 1, which is x, plus a negative 1, which is your y, equals 3. That should work. So you have 4 minus 1 equals 3. 3 equals 3. So check. You could do it with the other one too. I'll go ahead and do it since it's pretty fast here. That x is 1. So 2 times 1 plus a negative 1. I'm just going to go ahead and show this how I'm substituting it. Equals 1. So you have 2 minus 1 equals 1. And that is 1 equals 1. So do you see how this solution, 1, negative 1, makes both equations true when you plug it in? That should work every single time, no matter what kind of problem you're doing. The solution should always work. So for this next one, it tells you to use substitution because one variable is isolated. So what I like to do is just put it in parentheses to remind myself that this whole part of the equation is going to be plugged into the other equation. So I'm going to put 5, and instead of x, I'm going to put negative 7y plus 5. Okay, so that's this part here, plus 4y equals negative 6. Now when I have to distribute here, so I have negative 35y plus 25 plus 4y equals negative 6. So now I'm going to combine my y's, which is going to give me a negative 31y plus 25 equals negative 6. I'm going to subtract 25 from both sides to isolate the variable. So I have negative 31y equals negative 31. So you can see that if I divide both sides by negative 31, I'll bring that out of room here. So y equals a positive 1. So now that I know that y equals positive 1, I'm going to go ahead and plug the value here into this equation. So I have x equals negative 7 times 1 plus 5. So x equals negative 7 plus 5. X is going to equal negative 2. So my solution is negative 2, 1. Just to verify, I'm going to go back into this equation here, plug these numbers in to see if it makes it true. So I'm going to plug negative 2, okay, equals 7, negative 7 times 1 plus 5. So I have negative 2 equals negative 7 plus 5. negative 2 equals negative 2. Check. I want to make sure it works for this other one too. So I'm going to plug in 5 times negative 2 plus 4 times 1 equals negative 6. So when I do that, I have negative 10 plus 4 equals a negative 6. Negative 10 plus 4 is negative 6, so negative 6 equals negative 6. So definitely negative 2, 1 works for both of these equations. For the next one, I have to use elimination / combination. Those terms are used. Why? Because neither variable is isolated. So I also see that I don't have opposite coefficients. So what I'm going to have to do is multiply one of these equations or both equations by by a number so that I can get opposite coefficients. So what I'm going to do is multiply this whole bottom equation by negative 2. What that gets me is that's going to give me a negative 8x, because negative 2 times 4x is negative 8x. Negative 2 times 3y is negative 6y. And negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. I'm going to go ahead and write this other equation underneath it. 8x plus 9y equals 10. And then I'm going to combine them. And when I combine these two equations, I can see that these x's are going to cancel out. So that's the elimination. That's why they call it elimination. They also call it combination because I'm combining both of these equations. I have negative 6y plus 9y. That's going to give me 3y. And negative 4 plus 10 is going to give me 6. I'm going to divide both sides by 3 so that y equals 2. Now that I know that y equals 2, I'm going to plug it back into the other equation here. So I have 8x plus 9 times 2 equals 10. 8x plus 18 equals 10. And I'm going to subtract, I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. 8x equals negative 8. So divide both sides by 8. X equals negative 1. So now that I know my solution is negative 1, 2, I'm going to go ahead and plug it into this other equation just to make sure that it works. So 4 times the negative 1 plus 3 times 2 should equal 2, or I've done something wrong. Okay, so I have negative 4 plus 6 equals 2. Negative 4 plus 6 is 2, so 2 equals 2. Check. So now I know that my solution is correct. For this next one, it says solve the system by graphing, and as you can see, neither one of these equations is isolated, so are in slope-intercept form. So this one's pretty easy to do. I'm just going to add 1 to both sides. So I have y equals negative 3x plus 1. Okay, where my slope is negative 3 and my y-intercept is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that one. My y-intercept is positive 1. And my slope is negative 3. So that's going to go down 1, 2, 3 to the right one, 1, 2, 3 to the right one. Or I can go up 1, 1, 2, 3 to the left one. So here is my first line. And so for this next one, I have to do a little more work to get the variable isolated. I'm going to subtract 12x from both sides. So I have 4y equals negative 12x plus, that's a minus 12. Minus 12. And then I'm going to have to divide each term by 4. So I have y equals negative 3x minus 3. So my slope is negative 3, and my y-intercept is also negative 3. Now, one of the things I want you to pick up on right away is that you notice that the slope here is negative 3, and the slope here is negative 3. I should have put this was a negative 3. Okay, so when you have the same slope, that means that the lines will never intersect. So that means that there is no solution. If the lines are never going to intersect, then there's no solution because they'll be parallel lines. But let's go ahead and graph it just to be sure that here is my y-intercept. And I'm going to go down, or I can't go down 3, it puts me off the graph, so I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3, and to the left 1. 1, 2, 3, to the left 1. And you can see that these lines are parallel. Therefore, they will never intersect, so there is no solution. Okay, so you can prove it by graphing, okay, by graphing them, but you also could just see if the slopes are the same, the lines will never intersect. For this next one, it says use the transitive property. Why? Because both of the y's are isolated. When you have both variables isolated, that means that 2x minus 6, if both of them are isolated, that means they equal each other, equals negative 3x plus 14. So now when I do this, I'm going to add 3x to both sides because I like my variables to be positive. And when I do that, I'm going to have 5x minus 6 equals 14. Add 6 to both sides. And I have 5x equals 20. So divide both sides by 5, and x equals 4. Now that I know that x equals 4, I'll just plug it into this equation here. Y equals 2 times 4 minus 6. So y equals 8 minus 6. Y equals 2. So my solution is 4, 2. Now, just to be sure, I want to go back and plug it into the other equation to make sure it works. So my y is 2. Okay, and it equals negative 3 times 4 plus 14. So 2 equals negative 12 plus 14. 2 equals 2. Check. So if it equals each other, you know that that is the correct solution. This last one, you have to choose the best method to solve. So you get a choice. When one variable is isolated, I would use substitution. Could you have used something else? Yes, but this, and again, I like to remind myself that this is when I'm substituting. This is the best one because only one variable is isolated. Remember, if one variable is isolated, then you use the substitution. If both variables are isolated, you use transitive, and if no variables are isolated, you would use combination elimination. So for here, we have 12x plus 3, substitute the negative 4x plus 5 equals 15. I'm going to distribute the 3 to both terms inside of the parentheses. So I have 12x minus 12x plus 15 equals 15. Now what do you notice here is you have 12x minus 12x, they cancel each other out. So I'm left with 15 equals 15. So what do you do with that when both of them equal each other? Well, that simply means that they're actually the same line, so that there's an infinite number of solutions. How do I prove that they're the same line? Well, do you see how this y is isolated? Let me go ahead and isolate this one. So if I have 12x plus 3y equals 15, so this is the way to double check this, okay? I'm going to subtract 12x from both sides, and I have 3y equals negative 12x plus 15. If I divide each term by 3, y equals negative 4x plus 5. Do you see how y equals negative 4x plus 5 is the same here? So they, in essence, are the exact same line. When they're the exact same line, it's an infinite number of solutions. So when they have the same slope, there's no solution. When they're the same line, infinite number of solutions. For the last one, for the word problem, we have you buy 6 small candles and 1 large candle for $24. So in your what does that look like? Well, I'm going to basically just say 6s plus 1l equals $24. So that's one equation. The next part says your friend buys 4 small candles and 2 large candles also for $24. So you have 4 small candles and 2 large candles for $24. So you could do substitution because, I'm sorry, you could do elimination combination because neither variable is isolated. You could also easily isolate the L because there's one L if you wanted to do substitution. I like combinations the best. That's my favorite to do. So what I'm going to do is basically just multiply this whole top by -2. When I do that, I'm going to get, and I'm just going to write it underneath here, I'm going to get -12s minus 2L equals a -48. And then I'm just going to combine these. So I have 4s minus 12s gives me -8s. I eliminate the l's, positive 2l minus 2l, equals a -24. Because 24 minus 48 is -24. I'm going to divide both sides by -8. And that kind of ran out of room here, but you get the idea. And so that the small candles actually cost -8 into -24 is +3. So the small candles cost $3. Once I know what the small candles cost, I can easily plug it in into one of the equations. So I'm going to do that. So 6 small candles, 6 times 3 plus the large candle equals 24. So I get 18 plus the large candle equals 24. Subtract 18 from both sides. The large candle is going to equal $6. And that should make sense to you. So you have the small candle is $3 and the large candle is, so I'm going to just go ahead and write that out. Small equals $3 and large equals $6. And you could plug it into the other equation just to make sure, does that make sense? That if I did 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 6 times 2, which is 12, equals 24. And so that works. So hopefully this helps you and that you all get 100% on the actual quiz. And remember, I'm here if you need me, if you don't understand anything. Have a great week.